Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. It's time now for part number 6 of my 2011 college football Big 12 preview. And today we make a trip to Manhattan, Kansas to talk about the K-State Wildcats. Even though last season K-State may not have lit the world on fire and may not have won a Big 12 championship, we didn't expect them to. Matter of fact, we didn't know what to expect from Bill Snyder's team. But Snyder, who this season will turn 72 years old, and it'll be his 20th season total coaching the Wildcats, did lead his team to a 7-win season and a bowl appearance, a game in which, as you can look over my shoulder, they played Syracuse in the Pinstripe Bowl and got absolutely hosed in that game. But that's another topic for another day. For Kansas State, when I was doing my research on them, the one thing that I really noticed is the fact that them and Iowa State really have a lot in common entering this season. Both teams have to replace their veteran QBs. Both teams also have to replace their all-everything running backs, who happen to be their best player. In the case of Kansas State, that was, of course, Daniel Thomas, the All-Big 12 running back. Both also have to replace their top 2 wideouts, and both do have their leading tackles on the offensive side, their starting tackles, returning. So we'll talk about the offensive line in just a second, but to me, key number 1 for this Wildcat team, I think, is going to be the quarterback position, because it is going to be relatively new. Colin Klein did play a little bit last season. Carson Kaufman played most of the season. Klein did most of his damage by running the ball. Wasn't really known as a terrific passer. This season, Bill Snyder has options. He can stay with Klein, or he can let Justin Tuggle, a junior college transfer, take over the reins. Now, Tuggle is known as more of a overall passing quarterback, not so much the runner that Klein is. Snyder could also go the route to have them play 50-50. I'll be curious to see what Bill Snyder does as far as that quarterback position goes. And I bring this up because, of course, we beat this like a dead horse last year, and that is K-State's lack of a passing game. They were one of the 25 worst teams last year in college football when it came to passing. Running game was terrific. Passing game was another story. And if K-State can, have diversity, to me they're always going to be known as a running team, but if you can pose a passing threat, then your team is going to really benefit from that. The running game, no question, Daniel Thomas is a huge loss. He was a multiple Big 12 selection at running back, a terrific career. But maybe, as we get to key number 2, what can Brown do for you? We're talking about Bryce Brown, who is one of the more highly touted high school recruits just a few years ago. Some thought he was going to go to Miami. He actually ended up in Tennessee, but that didn't work out. So now he lands at Kansas State, pretty close to home. So that's really good news for this Wildcat team that definitely will need somewhat of a playmaker in the backfield, because Thomas is difficult to replace. People in the Sunflower State believe that Bryce Brown could be every bit as good as Thomas, but he doesn't have that experience. But what will help Brown is running behind those experienced tackles. Speaking of the offensive line, how about these guys at tackles? Manesi Fiketti at one tackle, and then Clyde Offner playing the other one. Again, these guys are pretty experienced. You do, however, have to replace the guards, and you'll have a new center. The running game for Kansas State, I would expect, even though Thomas isn't there anymore, will pick up from where it left off, because I think that everything I've heard about Bryce Brown, he is going to be dynamite. As we mentioned earlier, K-State did lose their top 2 wideouts, but they're still going to be pretty fast. They don't have Aubrey Quarles there anymore, but Broderick Smith could be the fastest of the bunch, and they'll also get some speed as well from Chris Harper and also Tremaine Thompson. So looking at Kansas State, you've got receivers. The question is, will Bill Snyder, will that passing game utilize them the way that they should? If they can, then I would expect Kansas State to be trouble for whoever they play this season. Now, the defensive side, and key number 3, sew up that horrible rush defense. Last season, there was only one team in college football that gave up more rushing yardage than the Wildcats. That's right, K-State was ranked 119th in the country when it came to stopping the run. Gave up 3,000 yards total for the year 2010. Very embarrassing. Not just bad, but embarrassing to give up well over 200 yards on the ground per game. So the rush defense, one area where they hope that they've made this improvement is getting out of the 4-2-5 and going to the 4-3. Having that extra linebacker in this alignment should help out a little bit. Linebacker position, and again, what can Brown do for you? Well, how about Bryce Brown's brother, Arthur Brown, who's a transfer from Miami of Florida? They think he will help right away. Emmanuel Lemure, former safety, he's been converted to linebacker, and as far as up front, this is probably one of the biggest concerns I have for Kansas State because the defensive line is not very impressive. The numbers last season would indicate that big time. So at the tackles, Ray Dibble and Raphael Guidry, they will be under the microscope big time for KSU. The secondary, very few reasons to be concerned. I know that they gave up yardage last season, but it's kind of like Iowa State. You got some good defensive backs, but at the same time, when the front seven isn't performing, when they're not doing their part, the secondary suffers firsthand. But this secondary, it's going to be one of the best, I think, in this part of the country because of the speed and experience you have back. The safeties, Ty Zimmerman and Tyson Hartman, could be the best safety tandem in the country. You can probably rank them up there with Christian Scott and Blake Gideon of Texas. These guys are that good. And then David Garnett, he is back for the Wildcats. In fact, he was their leading tackler a year ago. In fact, Kansas State returns their top 4 tacklers from 2010. So experience on the defensive side is going to be there. Speed's going to be there. Question is, can Kansas State do a better job of containing the run? We saw it 2 years ago because they were one of the best teams in defending the run back in 2009, and last year was a big-time nest heap plunge. So improvement, obviously their opportunity there for the Wildcats. We'll see if that happens. And the special teams wise, John Hubert, who will be used as a running back, but he will be the main kick returner for the Wildcats. But you have to unfortunately replace the place kicker. Looking at the schedule for the Wildcats, the first 2 games should be cake. The problem, though, is that they get their bye week in the middle of those 2 games. I can think of a much better place to have that bye week, but that's just the way the schedule lays out. The third game, they'll be an underdog because they're playing at the Miami Hurricanes. So at that point, you're playing with house money. The schedule in the Big 12 doesn't lay out too terribly when you consider that K-State now has to play everybody in the Big 12 and not just 3 teams from what used to be the Big 12 South. It's all one division now, it's all cutthroat, but at least 5 of the 9 conference games are at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. That will help. But I think the realistic goal for this team, for the Wildcats, is try to get to a bowl game again. That will mean 6 victories. That's where the butt comes from. I've got K-State favored to win 5 ball games, the 2 non-conference games, plus the games against Kansas, Baylor, as well as Iowa State. So an upset is going to be required at some point in order to get back to the postseason. And a game to talk about, maybe one of those victories could be against Missouri. Now on paper, that looks like a tall order, as well as recent history, because of the fact that Missouri lately has owned Kansas State, including last season. But remember, Missouri doesn't have Blaine Gabbert anymore, or Alden Smith, or their best offensive lineman in Tim Barnes. The game will be in Manhattan, and it'll finish off a home stretch in which K-State would have hosted 4 of their first 5 games to start the 2011 season. And also remember, too, Missouri was not one of the best teams last year when it came to defending the run, something that Kansas State, of course, excels at. So this could be a golden opportunity to pull off an upset in a game where you may not even think is a potential upset game. Bill Snyder last season got this team to the Pinstripe Bowl. He hopes to get them back to postseason play. 2012, I think, is a season that will lend itself as a better opportunity for Kansas State because of the fact that they'll have a lot of experience coming back for the following season. But this year, we'll see if Kansas State can pull off an upset or 2 and get back to being in a bowl game. That will do it for my preview of the Wildcats of Kansas State. My next preview, we're going to head to College Station to talk about the Texas A&M Aggies. So long for now.